have a president now, and you think the democratic system worked, right? The people have elected their president, although in the Lebanese case, it took a few rounds. But now there's a man who will lead the republic for the coming years. Whether you are a citizen of Lebanon or the United States, I am here to tell you that those systems we participated in, the ones to elect our presidents, they are not free nor fair, and therefore not democratic. But you will say that in both countries, the people have the opportunity to go out and have a say in electing their leaders. The systems reflect the popular will of the people, and that will is reflected by the slip of paper we put into the ballot box. Is it not? Yeah. That is not democracy. Who would you say holds more power today? The people, meaning you and I, or the presidents of our countries and the ministers they've elected from their group of friends? If you agree that the latter is true, then you should also agree that we have democracy all wrong. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. Democracy did not begin in America, but is often cited as a prominent example. Yet the ills of American democracy span from the electoral system to the permeating influence of capitalism. Through that circus, did any of you hear any ideas about policies that you want your governments to mimic? Ideas about banning Muslims, building walls, and throwing political opponents in jail. And yet that man with those big ideas, he was elected to be president of one of the most powerful nations on earth. Here in Lebanon, a brutal civil war was fought over some of the same ideas. Yet were any of those ideas legal, moral, constitutional, or democratic? The most illusory of these four concepts here is democracy. If we do not understand the root of the idea, then we cannot begin to judge what has gone wrong. The word democracy literally comes from the ancient term demokratia, meaning the rule of the commoners. In Thucydides' history of the Peloponnesian War, democracy enshrines the principle of individual equality. Perhaps the Egyptians had it right in 2013, when many felt that Egypt's first democratically elected president was misguided after only 1 year in office. Rather than allow him to carry out the remainder of his 4-year term, he was overthrown. I was in Cairo that summer, and I remember an Egyptian friend telling me, if you paid a man to build you a house, and after some time you saw he was building you a parking lot, would you allow him to finish? Or would you stop him and replace him when you first realized the mistake? Why do we all endure the pain of watching politicians who fail to fulfill promises, that we often become so frustrated with our systems that we hear people say, I don't care about politics? Palestinian author Mourid al-Barghouti once wrote, politics is the family at breakfast. Who is there, who is absent, and why? Who misses whom when the coffee is poured into waiting cups? Politics is about your relationship to one entity, and that relationship to a third party. Politics is just as divisive as it is unifying. Politics is in our homes, our universities, our offices, and even in death. So whether or not you believe you are participating in politics in the governmental sense, everything you do is ultimately political. In 2003, the president of the country I was born in authorized airstrikes against the country my father was born in. Iraq was an illegal war undertaken without national nor international consent. And yet the people who perpetrated those actions, killing over 1 million people in the process, have yet to be brought to justice. This is not democracy. Democracy is found through liberal democracy, which has institutionalized elections, respect for the rule of law, and protections for human rights. The reality today, though, is that almost no liberal democracies exist. The world is a collection of illiberal democracies. most famously coined in 1997 by political affairs expert Fareed Zakaria. An illiberal democracy has some functions of a democracy, such as the presence of a ballot box, but yet has other facets of society that render it not fully free nor fair. In illiberal democracies, protections are offered only for some citizens, and that is usually on the basis of race or religion. In illiberal democracies, political freedoms are outright stifled or otherwise curbed for fear of threatening the existing regime. In illiberal democracies are plentiful, and we see them from Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Lebanon, and the United States. But modern democracy was not always illiberal. In the United States, there is a system called the checks and balances system, where there are 3 independent branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. A recent example of this system in action is when President Trump attempted to issue a travel ban against the citizens of 7 predominantly Muslim nations. The United States Supreme Court stepped in, and they revoked the president's legitimacy to enforce this ban. The freedom of movement is a human right, and human rights are for all humans, period. Distinguishing who gets what, when, and where, by religion, race, or other distinguishing feature, is thereby dividing us into segments that will ultimately war with one another. For guidance, listen to these words from political activist Sharon Gannon. The word politic refers to the greater body or community. To be politically active is to be conscious of how your actions affect that community, and to strive to improve the enhancement of that community. That community is each one of us. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. As individuals with knowledge, social media platforms, a voice, and most importantly, ideas, it is our duty to ensure that the government is not leading us, but that we are leading them.